Welcome to Combos from the Couch by LifeStance Health, where leading mental health professionals help guide you on your journey to a healthier, more fulfilling life. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Combos from the Couch. I'm Nicolette Lianza, and today I'm joined by Ken and LifeStance therapist Kara Guevara, and we'll be talking about the mental health cost of estrangement. We'll unpack what estrangement really is, what brings families to that breaking point, and what healing and resolution can look like. So, thank you again, Kara and Ken, for being on with me today.
Thank you for having us.
So, let's start off. What is estrangement, and how is it different from just a strained relationship? So, Kara?
So strained relationship, there's generally contact still, right? It may have evolved into a relationship that feels a little bit more strained, uncomfortable, rigid. A lot of times there's some sort of conflict going on, but there generally is contact or seeing of each other, holidays, birthdays. I do feel like with a strained relationship, because there is contact still, there's room for mending of the relationship potentially. And that differs from estrangement. I view estrangement on a spectrum, right?
Mhm.
Like it can be from one extreme, estrangement, where it's like, I don't know where they are. I will not talk to them. And even in death, I don't plan to see them again. A phone call once a year or text messages here or there. With estrangement specifically, there generally isn't a lot of in-person contact, if at all. The relationship is severed and there isn't room for mending or trying to make repairs. And that doesn't mean that it can't be repaired, but that's how I define the difference between a strained relationship and an estrangement.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Ken, your
So,
thoughts?
yeah, within both of these terms, the key subject is communication, right? Like Kara said, in a strained relationship, there's at least some communication going on. It might be awkward and it's really difficult at times, but at least the two parties are trying to communicate for the betterment of the whole. In estrangement, it's like black and white. There's a complete sever of any communication. So you don't ever really know what is being communicated to other people either. So the communication issue is really key in estrangement, and the lack of it leads to more and more problems as the time goes on.
So, what are some of the most basic reasons some families become estranged?
It can be a variety of different reasons. Historically, there had been a lot of parental estrangement where the parents had chosen to distance themselves from the child for one reason or another. We're seeing it more where it's the adult children distancing themselves. Some reasons can be marriage. If you marry someone and they're not a fan of the family, over time, it's like me or them. That could be part of it. Additionally, it could be abuse causing the estrangement. It can be substance abuse or drugs. It could be mental illness causing the estrangement. It's getting more common and it can happen to anybody. Fantastic parents, fantastic children, and estrangement can happen to anyone. And it doesn't really pick one population of people. It really can happen to almost anyone. And it can be absolutely devastating for the people left behind.
Yeah, so she's stealing all my thunder. Anyway, I'll start with the number one reason is a third party. It doesn't have to be a spouse, but more than likely it is. It's a spouse or a partner. It can even be just a friend who has that person's ear. So I kind of go back to the book of Genesis, right? Kara alluded to this. It says in the book that a man will leave his mother and father and cling to his wife. So there's a control factor there. And some of these adult children really take it to the ninth degree. My pastor is estranged. So it goes across all genres. Nobody really can escape it. And the mental health issue, I'll expand on that. For example, narcissism is one of the key in all its different forms. So they'll build stories, they'll tell lies and stuff. They basically build themselves what I call a reality bubble. So they'll not only estrange the parent, they will have to get rid of everyone in their orbit,
Okay.
including their own friends that may have known the parents. So they have to get rid of all of those people in order to build this bubble around their life. And the only people they can let in are the people they can control. So they can tell them their stories without any kind of. And the thing about it is that they cannot allow the truth to come in any way, shape, or form, because that busts their bubble. It destroys their stories, and they can't have that. So those are the two biggest ones and I've done interviews for my new book for people all over the world, and it's pretty similar. It's really strange how, like, for example, in Australia, I don't know why, there's just a huge amount of people that are going through this, and the reasons are the same. Yeah.
Got you. Interesting. Very interesting. Wow. And Ken, do you mind sharing with us your own personal story?
Sure, I'll share it. And I have been estranged now for 6 years. I haven't seen my granddaughters. I have twin granddaughters who I haven't seen for that long. I'll give you a little bit of foundation. My wife and I have been married for 46 years. We had 3 boys. All of them are good men. Our oldest is going to be turning 40 on Monday, and we had twin boys that are 35. One of our twins, unfortunately, fell into drug addiction. We were actually estranged. Drug addiction does that. It
True.
separates the actual person from their family, and that becomes their most important thing to do. We met a girl, of course, and they were doing things that were just unbelievable. So eventually, he went to live with her, and we get a call one day that she's pregnant. They wanted to do a reveal, so we went to this reveal, and we found out that they were having twins, and he's a twin. Twins run in our family, so it's a special thing for us. She continued to do drugs through her pregnancy. When the girls were born, they were drug addicts, and they had to be weaned off of drugs by morphine. She would not let us see them until we got there one day when our son was there, and he put the girls in our hands. We have a picture of us in the hospital the girls were really tiny. Unbeknownst to us, even when the girls were still in the hospital, they had started dealing. They would go out and do drug deals while the girls were still in the hospital. And the girls came home, and 10 days later, they went out and tried to rob a 94-year-old lady, and they both got caught. So they both went to jail. And while they were in jail, the girls, CPS intervened, of course. And because the mother contacted CPS and told them she didn't want us being involved in their life for any reason, they got placed with her great aunt.
That'd be
Fortunately,
very difficult for you right there.
it was terrible. CPS is not high on my list of people I want to have at my dinner table. But we became really good friends with the great aunt. It turned out that the girls would come to live with us. So we basically raised them for the first 2.5 years of their life. And we formed a bond with them just like parents do. I mean, they were our kids because their real parents were not available. Our son was at an institution not far from our home, and I would take one of the girls for visitation to see him, and then my wife would take the other girl later on in the day because you couldn't have more than one person, so that they would keep the contact, so that they would know their father. He was released, I think, just before their second birthday. And he came to live with us because he had nowhere to go, which was fine. And then because the girls were there. So then we had hoped that he would start bonding with them.
Yeah.
And he showed no interest at all. None. He would run around, and he saw the relationship between us and them. Just to give you an idea of what he would see is when the girls went to daycare when they were just before their second birthday, and I switched my shift at work so that I could be home with them in the morning and take them to daycare they only went for a couple of hours. And then I would come home late at night at about, 7:30, 8 o'clock. And when I would come in the back door, they would come running to me and Ampa, and they would jump up on me and I would hold them both. And he had to watch all that. So I don't know. We never really talked about any of it. I don't know how he took it, but our bond was very, very strong. And then he met this woman who was a nurse in our children's hospital here in Milwaukee in the emergency room. And this was right when COVID started. So 2020, 2019, 2020. And she was a third party. She was a controlling partner, and she convinced him that we were trying to steal them from him to be their parents. And because he started saying things like, I'm the father, and all kinds of strange things that, he wasn't brought up that way. So,
Sounds like you were very villainized.
yeah, to say the least. And then
Mhm.
I think that the date was April 2nd. I was on my way home, and my wife called me and said, our son is here. He's picking up the girls and he's taking them to her house, and they're going to live there. We had no idea. We weren't given any notice, no nothing. I didn't even get to say goodbye to them. He just took them and away they went. So they went to her house, and that's when it started. He wouldn't even let us Skype with them. When we would make little baskets and stuff and take it over to the house, they would see us through the door. And so they'd put their hands on the door and they'd cry. And we would too, because we missed them. But
Heartbreaking to see them looking back at you guys.
yeah,
Very
it was.
cool.
And the first day, I was always the one that had to do that kind of stuff. I took them to daycare the first time, and they cried their eyes out. It was terrible. But then they wouldn't let us see them. And then finally one day, all of their cousins were meeting in a county down a little bit south of Milwaukee here. So they allowed us to take them to be with their cousins. And then we had them for that afternoon. And we didn't think anything of it. The girls fell asleep in our home like they've done 100 times. We packed them up and took them home. Didn't see them for about 2 or 3 weeks. And then all of a sudden, 4 weeks later, we get a call from the great aunt who we had helped transition. The police had showed up at their house accusing them of doing something to the girls. She was warning us because they left knowing they were at the wrong house. She said, I'm thinking that this is going to happen for you. And it did. They came to us. So they made up a series of stories about something that never happened. It went through investigation. It was basically thrown out. There was no evidence, no nothing. But my son refuses to agree with the findings of the investigation, which tells us that he was part of it to begin with. He refuses to, I have never been able to talk to him. My wife has had conversations with him, but whenever this subject comes up, he tells her he doesn't want to talk about it. He knows what happened. So that's his reality bubble. He's built this series of stories and he clings to them, and he can't let anybody get in. So I haven't seen my twin granddaughters for 6 years now.
I can't
And I
imagine how
knew,
painful that is for you, Ken, and your
yeah,
wife.
it destroyed me. And I ended up under suicide watch. And when I came out of that, Kara had been my therapist. She's the one that basically said, "Hey, you need to go here to get some help." And when I came out, we talked about this and she diagnosed me with PTSD. So I went for therapy for that. And thankfully, I learned so much and came out so much better. So now I use the pain that I have as a motivation to do the things and to reach out to people the way I do.
That's amazing. Is that how you've been able to get some resolution? Because I was gonna ask, how can people find resolutions from estrangement? So is that how you found some of your resolution, putting that pain into
Yeah.
action?
So typical resolution rarely ever happens.
There.
What people are looking for is what I try to relate to people is to look for your own peace. Take care of yourself because if the situation ever comes up where you could have a chance to sit down and have those kind of discussions, you better have yourself in order first before
Mhm.
you try to have that conversation with them because you better be prepared. And I'm not a therapist. I'm just a person that knows how it feels. The amount of people that I talk to, how widespread this is. And for a lot of them, I talk to people who have been estranged for 20 years and they know that there isn't any chance that they'll ever resolve their situation. So that's always the first thing that I tell them is you need to take care of yourself.
Key point right there, taking
Right.
care of yourself.
Yeah.
Kara, what would you like to add?
I guess with resolution, I always like to be optimistic, but at some point when there isn't any evidence that the other person or people want to find resolution or restart that relationship, work through it through family therapy, you can't fix a relationship that another person doesn't want to have with you.
Right.
And there's not going
Right.
to be any like statement, it can get to a point where there's not going to be anything that you're going to be able to say to necessarily like change their mind. And that is how we first met. I feel like we've been working together for a really long time. I think since 2021, right? Or early 2022. And through the years, I feel like we first kind of targeted like, what can we do? What can we say? So I think that there was some reaching out. And I think that Ken and his wife and his other two sons have all coped with this and grieved differently as well. And like what needs to be done. And like, like I know that grandparents' rights was explored. I know, like, can we legally bring them in to just have a conversation was an option. And exploring all the options was part of the healing journey of like, I've tried everything I could think to try.
Yeah.
And before I just give up, give up. And I say that in quotes because
Mhm.
I don't know that it's giving up. I think it's accepting it. And I
Mhm.
think with it is grief.
It's grieving the loss of that relationship.
Truly. And one thing that makes estrangement particularly difficult is when someone dies, we don't think to ourselves, they're going to come back. There's some finality to that. And with estrangement, there's always this idea of getting married. So and so had a baby, grandma died, and there's a funeral, and they're invited to that. There's all these milestones in life that you wonder where this will be. No one can tell the future. We don't know what will happen, but you do have to find a place where my suffering isn't going to change the circumstance, right?
Right.
And I think what was really important for Ken to find some resolution and peace, right? And it's an ongoing journey for anybody
Mhm.
through this. And it's not a natural loss.
Right.
It's really important to just take one day at a time and try to find happiness with the family that's left. That can be really difficult for people to do. And we all grieve differently.
Definitely the different grief is, I think, in relation to this, helping people understand loss isn't just through death, loss is of relationships and acceptance of it be the most difficult thing because accepting it doesn't mean I like that this happened. I'm accepting it for what it is, which is a very difficult thing to be able to do. So, what do people who are estranged need most in terms of support? Are there specific resources they can turn to?
The
Mhm.
most important thing that people need is to be heard. So if you look at the facts of estrangement just here in the United States, it's somewhere around 27 million people that are estranged, according to Psychology Today.
Mm.
However, recently I ran a poll on Facebook with over 400 people that
Mhm.
have been estranged, and I asked them one question. Did you know, or did you think you were the only one at the time the estrangement happened? Over 90% said that they thought they were alone. So if there's 27 million that are
Big.
identified, how many are sitting in the dark that have no idea that there's anything? So
Big.
resources are very sparse for
Mhm.
this group or for
Mhm.
mental health of this group. There's not a lot that's offered. Like here in the Wisconsin area, I know of two groups, two on-site groups, both of which I was part of, and I made my own because I know there's just not enough support. There's not enough resources, but there are several authors who are very good in this field. Sherry McGregor, who is still estranged herself, Dr. Joshua Coleman, he's a therapist, and Rachel Hack. They're all really good authors. I list their books on my website and other people's books that pertain to the subject. But the biggest piece is the awareness piece, right?
Mhm.
Because people don't come out. It's an embarrassment. That's the number one thing that inhibits people from coming forward and even talking about it, is that they're
Mhm.
embarrassed about it and they don't know how to talk to other people about it. So how can they look for resources if they don't even know how to talk? So raising the awareness, things like this, your podcast, which I'm so
Mhm.
thankful for. I just like on Facebook, I was telling Kara when you sent your questions to us, at that time I had 1,900 followers. Today I have 2,500. So
Wow.
in that little bit of time, it increased that much. And that it's because these people are, and you don't know how many times a person will say to me, I just stumbled across this site. I never knew anything like this existed. The resources, there aren't a lot of them, but they are growing. There are movements around. There are quite a few organizations, one I just made
Mhm.
contact with last week, that are trying to raise the bar because there's just nothing for people.
Definitely doesn't sound like it, very limited. Ken, what is the name of your website?
The name of my website is it's betrayedgrandparents.com.
Kara, your thoughts?
I think one part of it is kind of, identifying what you need to do. Like what do you need to write a letter? Do you need to explore all legal routes that you can explore? What is going to be healthy and supportive, and also of the boundaries, like if they're not willing to talk to you within reason, right? But I think identifying and supporting what it is that that person feels like they need to do to come to terms with things that is aligned with their mental health goals. And additionally, I feel like one thing that's super important and maybe isn't discussed enough is just the idea of how people grieve so differently, and
Mhm.
that you can experience the same loss of an adult child or grandchildren, and it can feel differently because a relationship between a father and son, and a grandpa and grandchildren, mom and son, and a brother to brother, is they're all different relationships. Each individual person is a different person. So for some people need to talk about it less. Like, I would like to remove the pictures from the wall because that is interrupting my ability to grieve, or I need to grieve in private. Like, I need moments that I can just break down and let it all
Mhm.
out. For other people, it's going over it again and again and again and
Yeah.
talking about it. For some people, it's total acceptance, like almost radical acceptance. It is. For other
Right.
people, there's like, that feels like a betrayal, right? Like accepting it and
Yeah.
moving forward is a
Right.
betrayal. And I think
Yeah.
within family dynamics, that mutual respect that we grieve at different paces in different ways is really going to be helpful, because situations like this can have an effect across the board and can impact the entire family unit. It's like a member of the family is now been removed from the family. They don't want contact with the family anymore. We have to rebuild this, and it's going to look extremely different. What does our new family unit look like?
Yeah.
It's not like
Yeah.
you can, it becomes sort of this elephant in the room, that support really comes from that mutual respect of I have boundaries within my family members. I can say, I can't talk about this today, and then they have support systems outside of the family unit, like counselors or good friends, things like that. And being able to talk about it too, because I think that, yes, it does feel kind of like almost shameful in a way, or just like, what will people think or say? Will they blame me too? Will they
Right.
think negatively about me if they
Right.
know the truth? It can feel very uncomfortable and very embarrassing. And I think that no one brings you a casserole when your child
Good
chooses
point.
not to talk
Yeah.
to you ever
Right.
again.
Very true.
So, and I want to point out too, like some estrangements are necessary, like in situations of abuse. And so it's not to knock the adult children that are
Right.
maybe listening to this and have chosen to do that. This is an individual
Right.
thing. But we're kind of, again, like in this situation, it felt very much, I think that your website, Nate, felt like a betrayal. I think many of
Yeah.
the people that are group members have felt that way.
I want to go off of what Kara said to show you in the family dynamic how that works. The 4 remaining members of our family all have completely different approaches. I'm using the pain that I have to reach out to others and do all of this. My wife is so internalized, she can't get to the acceptance phase, which to me is the hardest of all the phases that you go through in estrangement. Our oldest son is kind of like, I've picked up a rug, I've swept this under there, and that dropped the rug, and that's it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to do anything. And the other twin, he is himself as a therapist. So he kind of balances it by saying, if it comes up between us, he'll say, there's a boundary. We're going to talk about this for like 15 minutes and then we're going to stop. Those 4 people in family, and that shows you
4
the
different ways.
differences.
Very interesting. And I think really good point to identify there. It's going to be different for each person and how they
It
grieve.
is individual. Every situation that I've come across in the myriad of situations, they're all individual. And that's why you can't, I tell people all the time, there is no silver bullet. There's no one thing that I can tell you from somebody else's situation that's going to help yours.
Any other insights you guys would like to share?
I mean, it's a very complex issue, and there's a lot of different facets. Like Ken's story, there's accusations, legal parts. Like it's a very intense story, and it has a lot of different parts, and every single part of it needed to be grieved. Right. I think it's important to note that it's an ongoing journey. Like you can be doing well, right? Like you can feel like you're, oh, wow, like I haven't thought about it today. Right. And you find this new normalcy. And then within that normalcy, you find joy again. And then someone gets married and they're not there, or they are there, and you're hit with another wave of grief.
Right. Good
Someone
point.
dies, or you have a health scare, or you have something coming up, and
Right.
they aren't there, and then there's another wave of grief. And so it can be ongoing, and it can hit you like a bus at times. And I think people need support of therapists and people outside, even their family unit that experienced it, to talk it through and grieve and let it in and then let it out. I think that's extremely important. And just folks out there who are in this position, you're not alone, is
Yeah.
important thing to know. And it is something that's super under discussed. And I think that a lot of times as a society, if you've never been through it before, you just assume like, oh, if someone doesn't want to have a relationship
That
with you,
happens to somebody else.
or they must have done something. It won't happen to me because they were bad parents, or that their child has a drug problem. That's why. It's not that simple. And you can have a fantastic relationship with your child, and
Yep.
and his wife did.
It's not biased at all. Estrangement doesn't care who you are or what you do. It's going to come for you. Another thing about it is that in every other walk of life or career or whatever you want to call it, there's a lack of oversight, right? So CPS has involvement in almost all of these cases, especially when the grandkids are involved. Some of the tools that they use aren't geared towards grandparents. Every single state has a different rule when it comes to court cases. Most of them are heavily slanted to the parent who has the children. The grandparents used to have rights here in Wisconsin, but as of 2019, we lost pretty much all of our rights. And as far as therapists go, it's just like any other career. There are really good ones. I've heard many grandparents come to me and say, the therapist that my daughter or son has is telling them to estrange me because of this or that or the other thing. And what is the recourse of a grandparent? Where do they go? How do you combat that?
Right.
It's sometimes silence is the only thing you have.
My gosh, Ken, Kara, I appreciate you talking to this topic because there isn't enough talk about estrangement. Awareness is really the key because so many are suffering and suffering alone because they don't realize there's so many other people out there suffering as well. Appreciate you both. And I'd also like to thank the team behind the podcast, Jason Clayton and Juliana Whitten. Thank you again for listening to Converse from the Couch. Take care, everyone.